Hello, friends. Welcome to the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. I am your host with a microphone in my face, hopefully properly adjusted. Kurt Wuckert Jr., as professional as ever, which is, kind of. If you like the show, first, let's get the business out of the way. Like, subscribe, and hit the alert bell. We need you to do these things because if we do not do these things, then our digital overlords will not know that you want to consume our content. Mainline directly into your brain if possible. So please do those things in the ad-based controlled economy of the internet. You must like, subscribe, and hit the alert bell because we need to tell the algorithms what to do. We would like to do better than that using the blockchain and using blockchain-based social media, but that's a journey. So, everybody, if you could check my pinned post, I'd really appreciate it. I wrote an article over the last couple of days as the prices are crashing everywhere again. Actually, not in precious metals and a bunch of other things, but the BTC economy getting pretty spicy out there. About a 30% drop in less than 60 days, and now MicroStrategy valued about $10 billion less than their own balance sheet, valued in BTC, showing that Wall Street doesn't seem to value the BTC on the sheets at all. And so I read a little bit about store value. Store value as a macroeconomic principle as it relates to money. So lots of things can store value, especially if you get lucky. So I think a lot of people got into Bitcoin and frankly got really lucky that the price went as bonkers as it did, especially if you look over the last 15 years. People have made, 100,000x or something in a decade or less. And so good trade, don't get me wrong, but just because something is a good trade or something has performed or even performed well over a certain amount of time doesn't necessarily make it a store of value. And actually, the thing that makes for a store of value is something that is able to be easily repurposed under pressure. So you're not really storing any value if under pressure that value cannot be repurposed into something else. And that's really the fundamental point of my article. So I explain some of the ways that you can actually use asymmetric stores of value. So I talk about things like vintage cars or a steel Swiss watch or artwork or antiques or some of these things that you do, you can't just go to the antique store and be like, hi, I'm here for a store of value. But if you do a little bit of research on your market and understand the principles of your market, you can put dollars into things that will outperform inflation, but without like the massive ups and downs of the market, of the market. Now, here's where this is a problem. In BTC, let's say you bought the top 60 days ago, right? You bought $125,000 BTC because everyone says it's a store of value, right? Well, if you need to spend that right now, it's only worth about $85,000 a coin. You have lost 30%. That is almost 1/3 of the value of the asset in less than 2 months. So the value that you stored is really, really problematic for a lot of reasons. And so you have to have stores of value that you don't want them to shoot up quickly, but the benefit of that is that they're not going to drop quickly either. And so you want something that is going to hold value in a way that's predictable over time. So I talk quite a bit about precious metals in the article and some of the broader macroeconomic principles in play. So if you're interested, I would appreciate it. It's my pinned post on X, and your comments would be appreciated. It's only got 7 likes right now, which I think X is now punishing people for posting an article link in the main post now. So trying to hack the algos. Sorry, Elon, please let people read my articles if I just post them directly from CoinGeek.com. I'd appreciate it. And, we're doing our best. I also want to thank our sponsor, RockWallet, rockwallet.com. If you need to keep your private keys, and you probably do, you're going to want to use RockWallet to do such a thing. They give you your seed phrase, and then you are able to port your stuff from RockWallet if necessary. Now, a lot of people complain about the KYC, but the KYC has nothing to do with the wallet itself. The wallet is completely non-custodial. The exchanging features built into the wallet require a minimum baseline of essentially a phone number, okay? And so if you want to use the exchange features of the wallet, you have to give them that information. But if you do not use the exchange features of the wallet, you don't have to give them anything. It is a self-sovereign, self-custodial wallet that can store your BTC, BCH, BSV, Ethereum, various Ethereum stablecoins, and the money stablecoin on BSV. That's MNEE, the only stablecoin that doesn't require gas to send it. Why? Because it's a Satoshi itself. It is a Bitcoin, everybody. and you have the ability to send it, even if you have no other. So somebody can just send you 1 penny of money, and that can be the only thing in your wallet, and you can go ahead and send it right back out because it's a sat. So there you go. It's exciting stuff. Thank you, Rock Wallet, for your sponsorship. It's very much appreciated, and we appreciate you. Our guest today is going to be Jake Jones from the BSV Association. Jake is one of the guys, actually, every time I talk to Jake, I learn something. And then we were talking before the show and was like, Jake, I haven't talked to you in about a year, and I feel like I haven't learned anything. So I expect to have quite a good show here with Jake. He's one of the people that's really dialed into a lot of the deeper infrastructural stuff in scalable Bitcoin. So what are the ways that we're going to be using Bitcoin in 5 years that makes it incredible to use? Things like IPv6 protocol integration and other stuff like that. He's the guy to talk to about these kind of things. And also he's been elbows deep in coding with the Anthropic Claude tools and lots of other stuff. So he's going to be talking quite a bit about how to not just vibe code, although vibe coding is probably going to be a good chunk of the conversation, but also data integrity, AI, and how AI relates to blockchain and a bunch of the other stuff. So you're going to want to stick around. We're going to play a little ad. I'm going to take a little sip of water to wet my whistle. I actually have I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I hurt my lip. You can see I got kicked last night in jiu-jitsu, and it pushed my lip up into my tooth. So if I seem a little goofy, or if you see me playing with my lip or feeling lispy or anything like that, my lip's a little numb. I kind of can't feel it today. So it's probably not a great day for me to be doing the show, but I apologize in advance. I am doing my very best. So let's play the ad. I'm going to take a moment here, and then we will be right back. Jake, welcome back to the show. I think I'm trying to look. I'm scrolling to see when the last time, and it's been at least 18 months because I can't find the episode. So, how have you been, man?
I've been well. Good to be here, Kurt. Good to connect with you again. I've just been, head down in the weeds, working on all kinds of different stuff, BSV related. So,
yeah, absolutely. What exactly is your title at BSVA? So I have like guys like Connor and Degan and Siggy and people on, and they all their titles sound like they're doing roughly the same kind of stuff. So what in particular, what is your title? And then what really is what's the vertical that you own?
It's IPv6 and AI specialist, I guess, or
right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, content specialist.
Right. Love it. So on that, and my team, it's funny, just in the last 9 months, we started with one guy. So Luke, who works with us over at Gorilla Pool, was like, guys, I really think like this Claude stuff is what's going to hockey stick. And he's into everything. He's, digging into Gemini. He's got all the ChatGPT stuff. He's into the lesser known, the Chinese models. Like he's kind of playing with everything, but he was really insistent on Claude. And now my whole team, like every guy on the team is like, man, all I do is direct. I just direct the AI to produce what I want. And I do a little bit of debugging and stuff, obviously, but the tools are really getting incredible. I would love to hear your journey. Like how did you get into, using AI tools in your code flow, and how has that evolved over the last, 9 to 18 months or however long it's been for you?
Yeah. So it has been a whirlwind of a journey. I can tell you that, because it seems to change every 2 weeks, as I'm sure you've experienced too.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I started out just doing kind of ChatGPT, playing around with it, not really using it so much for code. I mean, here and there, but the code that it was producing wasn't that great. So I used that for a little while, and then I had a Gemini subscription. Gemini has always been pretty bad with code until very recently. For most of the time I've been using it. So then I switched to Claude, and Claude has been phenomenal. I still think it's the best out of the bunch, for sure.
Yeah, it's been our experience too. It's funny. I've had a little bit of decent luck with Gemini over the last like 3 or 4 months. So like it wasn't one that I ever really used, but I like the way it integrates into their own, like, hey, just tell us what you want your app to look like, and then it'll just kind of bang out a web app, and it's like, oh, okay, that mostly works. But what would you say are the strengths? You know, if you're using more than one thing, like, and all of us are using Claude kind of as the main driver, but then we'll go other places where necessary. What do you think are the main strengths of you know, maybe the top 3 you mentioned, or maybe another tool or two that maybe people don't know about?
Yeah. So Claude is definitely the leading for code, and I would say the best for orchestration. And then Gemini has the biggest context window. So if you can utilize them all too. There's different MCP tools you can use to do this as well. And then I find ChatGPT is the best for kind of conversations or written material, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, and that's it's funny because it's really been it's been an interesting thing because I have a lot of content. Like I've been writing I've been writing with CoinGeek now for 5 years, but I've written as a ghostwriter and things for like 20. And so feeding it into the AI and saying, hey, just ingest all my information. So like be me essentially. And then it allows me, not for my articles, I still write like my editorials, but anytime there's like a newsy thing that happens, or I want to comment quickly and I need to understand. So it's like a New York Times article or something. Be like, okay, here's a piece of news. I'll feed it that and say, okay, read this, give me a summary. And then like, what would I say based on everything you know about me? Like, what would my comments be? And like, it spits it out. And I'm like, oh, it sounds like that's exactly what I would say. it's a weird thing to experience. Be like, it's like I'm replacing myself. It's very Black Mirror, basically.
Yes, yeah, but at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that it is just statistics, right? And you always need outside work to make this stuff usable. And there's been a whole bunch of different methods that scientists have been using to train the models, like adverse models, and they found that most of the time when it's AI generated data, the outcome isn't that great. So we're always going to need outside work, outside information coming into to the models and provide that.
Well, and speaking of outside information, you mentioned this conversation about how to poison an AI. Basically, you know, good data in, good data out, but bad data in, bad data out. And I remember early on, especially because I've been using ChatGPT since it was brand new, that if you asked it a question in a certain way, it would just kind of agree with you and then give you back whatever you wanted to hear, no matter how crazy it was. And then it would, like, if you would ask it, where are you referencing this from? And it would pick up like weird threads from Reddit or whatever, where they wouldn't understand like the context of like the sarcasm in this group. And it's like, no, you're treating this thing like it's true, but this group is like, all they do is lie to each other because it's funny. And so, you know, so it had a lot of trouble with context initially, but maybe talk about some of the ways that you can kill an AI, especially in the context of what we were talking about before we went on the air.
Yeah, so there's a huge article that was published. It's been like a little while now. I mean, a little while in relative terms. It's only been like a few weeks to a month. But it's an article that Anthropic put out, and what's the title of it? It's titled "A Small Number of Samples Can Poison LLMs of Any Size." And so what they've proven here, and they've done this with I think Oxford and a bunch of other big name universities. There's a Swiss university in there, and they've shown that it only takes 200 documents to poison any size LLM. And they also basically openly admit in the article that they trolled the internet and took everybody's data and used that to train their models.
Yeah, which is kind of, you know, it's funny. I go back and forth on this because on the one hand, it's like, all right, we're all being universally plagiarized if we have spent time on the internet. But it's also like, that's kind of what culture is too. So like a group of people on the internet that all care about something, like they're going to learn from each other anyways. And that's a little bit, if you just treat the AI like a human, it really is just kind of like becoming one of the friends and absorbing the culture and then reflecting it back a little bit. So I have really mixed feelings about how that works and if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But what do you think about? I guess just that, is that a thing where we need to be creating swim lanes to not let an AI sort of join the culture, for lack of a better phrase for it? But I guess what would the flip side of that even be? How would you train an LLM otherwise? Is there a better way to do it in your opinion?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's using the same method, but I think there's a better way to get that data. And that's where BSV comes in and IPv6 and all of that. But
Sure.
yeah, there's a whole bunch of different avenues we can go down. One that I want to mention that's really interesting, I was reading about it lately, is the whole sycophantic AI stuff that we were just talking about, how it'll just reflect back what you're talking about. And that's actually caused a new type of psychosis that they're starting to see.
Okay.
Yeah, I found that pretty interesting. But it just goes to show, like, if move fast and break things has been taken to an extreme here.
Yeah.
But getting back to the BSV side of things, so they've shown that they can't troll data anymore, and so they're running out of a source of data. And so if you can give data a value, which is what BSV is doing with micropayments, then you have a continuous source of good data that you can pay people individually for using micropayments, and then use that to train your models or use that to add context. And then people are actually earning from the data that they produce. So that's where I see a big marketplace forming. So you have a data marketplace, and then that data turns into information once it becomes useful in different contexts.
Sure. Well, and that was one thing, thinking about, like, if you were to just take medical, for example, and I'll ask ChatGPT, whatever, like, hey, I've got, like, I was doing a bench press and my outer deltoid really hurts. Like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, well, try to keep your elbows in. And, it starts giving you advice. And then it occurred to me, like, okay, is that like some standard of care for like a kinesiology institute or something? Or is it taking is it just like the weightlifting subreddit or whatever, and it's just a bunch of bros who are like, yeah, man, just tuck the elbows, or and it's like, not that either one is necessarily better, but I would like to know, where are we coming up with the quality of the feedback that comes in, and that's because it's like sore muscle is different than like, hey, I'm having I'm having some other thing that might be, indicative of a stroke or like early heart attack symptoms. Is a very different situation, which I think, I saw ChatGPT recently said, like, hey, we're stopping it from giving out medical advice because people are just treating the damn thing as a doctor. And I actually think a doctor is a really good use of the technology, but only, again, if you can program it with, maybe the American Standard of Care journal for all of these basic symptoms, and say, okay, in all likelihood, it's, you either have strep throat or you have, a viral thing or whatever. Like, these are the 3 or 4 things that it probably is. And therefore you should probably take amoxicillin and or whatever to be careful. But again, you still need to go to the doctor to get your prescriptions or whatever else. But, these kind of things are very brave new world kind of technologies. But I think if we tighten this up, essentially using, like what you're saying, like, if the data is known to be the right data, I think it'd be great to be able to log in, and instead of having to talk to a doctor who, just has to know and then have an opinion and say whatever, like, give it a rank score. Like, you probably have this thing and this is probably the right therapy for it. Like, I think it'd be pretty incredible if that then could say, and we can therefore give you a prescription for, some of these things that are not so dangerous. Like, it might not be able to give me, blood pressure medication, but, but if I have a cold, it's like, hey, here's something that might help you with this. But, well, like, what do you think that looks like in, I don't know, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I see that progressing in kind of a couple different ways. So the first way is definitely, especially with PPI or PII, I guess, that you're talking about, you have to, number one, provenance. So then it's coming from a good source. But then number 2 is you have to give that a value, and you have to pay people for that information. So you give them the opportunity to provide that in an anonymous way. And then that can be used as a good source of information to train these models or add context to the models. And so I do see that as an avenue that we could go. But I think it's still going to be in the context of a tool. I don't see it in the context of replacing anything, like even from the perspective of like a pharmacist, a prescribing pharmacist or something like that. I don't think it could ever replace that. It could become a tool that people access to streamline that process, but I don't think it's going to replace people.
Sure. It's speaking about medical. I used to go to a place. I think they've since gone out of business, but I used to go to a place in Miami that was called Forward, and it was a subscription model for your primary care. So you'd walk in, I'd sign in with a QR code on my phone, and then I would hop right on a scale and grab these handles, and it would take like my heart rate and all this basic stuff right out the gate. And then I'd walk into the room, and the screen would populate and be like, Kurt, here's the results from your last blood test and all this other stuff. Before I even see the doctor, it's kind of showing me like my various vitals and, here's your trends on things. And then the doctor would come in and like talk to me, but also turn around and like touch screen and like drag stuff around and like blow this thing. It was very like doctor of the future. I thought it was great because it was very hands off in a lot of ways. But then I could consult the doctor on, my particulars that I cared about, or that the system said, hey, a person needs to make decisions about, these various things. But it's keeping your data over time in a way that was like really easy to consume. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. This was before the AI boom happened. But it occurred to me that business model would work way better now if they had, again, their internal standards for all of their care could be programmed into the tablet or whatever. And then the doctor, again, because the doctor's going to know what they're used to seeing. But if you have something that's goofy, or if you have symptoms that are kind of giving you a mixed bag, like I like to think of like Dr. House, for example, was famous for, it was was your kid exposed to raccoon feces, or, it was always some goofy thing that he could think of. But like, that's exactly the kind of like Dr. House should be an LLM, right? Like, because he can ingest every possible set of symptoms and what they might point to, and could say, hey, it's probably this, but it could way out in left field also be this crazy rare thing that maybe you should test for. And, I would love to see us get there. Do you think, again, is that the kind of thing that is near, or like what are the big limiters to that, other than maybe like doctors forming a guild or something to say like, hey, don't replace us. Like we need to be involved in this process still, rather than being replaced with a robot.
Yeah. No, I don't see that happening. Like there are some major data aggregators that they've started doing this kind of stuff already, and functional medicine has been a big push for a while now, and getting diagnostics and tests and being up to date on all that stuff. So I don't see that being replaced. I do see it being augmented. So like that experience that you had at that clinic, that kind of thing, where everything, it just becomes easier and faster. And the key component to that is going to be data provenance and data ownership. So this is stuff like the Solid project, for example, from Tim Berners-Lee, and that's giving you control of your private information. And obviously, I believe that BSV is the key to making all of that stuff usable.
Yeah, for sure. What are the limitations right now? When I think about, like, yes, in a very basic sense, BSV is great for that, but we have to design data schemas that are relevant to that industry, and then you have to have an overlay that can access those data schemas. And like, what other, like, if you had the magic wand to say, hey, I want to accelerate this vertical, what would that look like? Am I on the right path, basically, with like data schemas, overlays, etc.? But like, what does that stack look like?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question, right? It's trying to come up with the best way to do this. I mean, I wrote a few BRCs recently that kind of went into this. One of them is just an enhanced version of the Mandela token protocol, but essentially just tying in identity into tokens. And so you can use the certificate system, and then you have a token identity that's tied to that. That's all put onto the blockchain, and then you link that to some kind of, like, a solid pod, for example, that has all your data in it. And then you have access control lists and all of that stuff. So you create kind of an ecosystem that's centered around private ownership of data. And then I think from there, as since you're using Satoshis and you're using transactions, it becomes interoperable through that mechanism. So I don't know if that's going to be kind of the main way of doing it with tokens. It could very well be that there's a better way to do it using 42 type key trees or something like that. But I think that's kind of the general idea behind it.
Cool. How does the other vertical that you're pretty closely associated with is IPv6, which I also haven't heard much about in the last year. So I don't know. I bumped into Latif in London and was like, "Oh, hey, really good to see you," And I didn't get the chance to talk to him, but we shook hands and said hey, and it was nice to catch up a little bit. But we did not, we didn't get into any particulars. Is that a missing piece that would help you build this out better? I always think of like what we're waiting for on some of these things, and like some of the high scale like IoT stuff. Obviously, it was like, well, we can't do 1 billion transactions a minute because Terranode wasn't ready, and like all these other things. But what does like IPv6 integration, first of all, what does it look like? What do we need to get there? And then what gets unlocked once we're in that paradigm?
Yeah, so where IPv6 comes in is the P2P nature of Bitcoin. And that's really the superpower of it, right? You have micropayments, and the fact that you can give a micropayment directly from Alice to Bob. You don't have to go through any intermediaries. That's the superpower. That's something that we've never had before. So what IPv6 does is it gives you that end-to-end connection over the internet anywhere. And currently you can't do that with IPv4. You have to go through NAT. There's different gateways. And that's kind of also shaped the way we interact with the internet. Like I would say the ad revenue model is kind of born out of that. It's the same type of concept, I guess. And so it's just, I think we need to slowly shift away from that. And IPv6, it's like they have to happen at the same time almost. Like if IPv6, you have BSV, you have the AI push, which is kind of helping speed things along. All of those things are going to come together to shift away from that ad revenue centric model to direct payments and micropayments, and having everything kind of be valued at all these different data points.
So it's almost like, IPv4, and then therefore kind of the internet itself is sort of a third party in this, that, Bitcoin's supposed to bypass all these third parties, but then, people just broadcast to the network instead of doing anything peer-to-peer. And then that broadcast has to go through various checks and filters. How much are we bypassing? And what does that look like practically? Like, the IPv6 thing, I think is a little too abstract for most people. Is it wallet level integration stuff, or does this have to be like our nodes providing like IPv6 endpoints that allow like listening to those types of transactions, or is it completely offline, again, just like totally wallet to wallet? Or like at what level does that need to be integrated?
At every level. So it's the transport layer, and it needs to be integrated at each level. And the best way to do IPv6 is, like, there's been some attempts to do kind of a hybrid system where you have both IPv4 and IPv6. But to do it properly, you want a completely separate IPv6 network. And so that would take time to develop. But you have a bunch of advantages that come along with that, like bigger packet sizes, so you can match those up. I mean, if you look at some of the opcodes, they've been specifically created for that purpose. Like jumbo packets, jumbo frames. And then the fact that it's hexadecimal too is kind of a nice convenience feature, because you can use something like a key, you can hash a key and integrate that with an IPv6 address. There's all kinds of different tricks you can do. Then the other really big piece that would be a very, very nice to have is multicast. It's not widely integrated yet, but it is used a lot in smaller contexts like databases or big data centers, that kind of thing, or pushing to content delivery networks, that kind of stuff.
Interesting. And so, like, if we're talking about multicast, would that be the kind of thing where, I mean, I think I would even need to update my router and things to take advantage of stuff like that, right? Or like how much hardware are we talking about would need to be switched out? I mean, I imagine, thinking about Gorilla Pool, we can make those changes, but then for the user, like does the user need to have like an IPv6 enabled phone to take advantage of multicast if they're going to do it?
Well, all of our phones actually already use IPv6, which is
Okay.
pretty nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's already nicely integrated there. That's why you see such a huge jump in places like India and China,
Sure.
because they're so mobile centric.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are, most of the consumer grade hardware is now getting to that point where you have multicast enabled. I mean, there's
Mhm.
always going to be different parts of the world that are a little bit behind other parts.
Yeah.
But I was recently at the African security IPv6 security event, and they are really focused on this. It was a great event. It brought people from all over the continent, which I was very, very impressed by. It's a
Nice.
huge place, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, they're really focused on leapfrogging the current system, and so this stuff, I think, it's going to have a lot more attention than people realize. And there
Yeah.
are some mandates already out there, and it's a big government push. I mean, there's always going to be it's going to be like two steps forward, one step back in some
Yeah.
ways, but I think we're closer than people realize.
Sure. There's also been a lot of resistance to the technology. IPv6 was proposed, what, 25 years ago at this point. Like who are these IPv4 maximalists that are holding back, such an upgrade? Is it just is it a laziness thing, or is there some kind of group of people that are like, no, it'll put us out of business if we switch, or, like what's the entrenched interest there?
I haven't heard anybody, like, I've seen some of the flame wars and stuff on different
Sure.
forums, but I think it just comes down to cost and
Hmm.
implementation cost and training, because there is a little bit of training that needs to be done as well to make sure that it's safe and
Yeah.
viable, and all of that has a cost. So it's just the easiest path forward has been IPv4 until recently. Now we're
Yeah.
switching over to IPv6.
Sure. Well, and I know there's been various extension protocols and stuff for IPv4 to keep making it, more of high, because I think we actually ran out of legit IPv4 addresses many years ago, and now we're on like some third or fourth iteration of extension protocols that just keep creating more. Is that adding? This is a little bit out of my depth. So, like, are we adding latency by having to use these various extensions, or like, what are the negative outcomes of dragging out IPv4 longer than it should be around?
It's a case to case basis. Most of the major ISPs, all of them use IPv6 now. Like,
Yeah.
over the main parts of the internet, everything is IPv6
Right.
now.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of that trickling down to the rest of consumer grade stuff. But there's going to be some holdouts where it makes economic sense for them to stick with IPv4, or they're some ideologically aligned with it for some reason. But
Sure.
it's inevitable. We're pushing towards IPv6, which is going
Yeah.
to be beneficial for us and BSV in a bunch of different ways.
From is there a speed boost because of it, or is it just simply a feature, like new features, or is it some kind of extra efficiency added? Like, I know you mentioned like the jumbo packets and stuff like that. So, I mean, does a jumbo packet create a lot more space for a lot more internet traffic at the same time, or like what does that look like practically? For a company like Facebook or Google or whatever, if they can get kind of everybody on board, or are we talking about like 100x improvement on bandwidth, or like what does that look like?
Yeah, honestly, I can't give you a number, but just the basics behind it is, anytime that, like, you have a certain size packet that hits a limit, you have to break it up, right? Like, you have to break that information up and stick into a whole bunch of packets. That adds latency and different costs. You have different infrastructure costs because you have to be able to rebuild those packets. Whereas with IPv6, you just simply stick it into one big packet and you can send that. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's an efficiency thing. The other thing too is the bigger address space. So as you mentioned, we're already out of IPv4 addresses. So
Yeah.
IPv6 we will never run out of. I don't think
Sure.
so. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's very
We're
big
talking
address space.
like
100
orders of magnitude. Like, are we talking about like from millions to quadrillions or something? Or
yeah, it's like 2 to the 128 or something like that.
okay. Okay. Yeah. So huge step up. Okay. Very cool. So back to let's talk a little bit more about like MCP servers and, you know, basically like what does this mean to a typical developer or somebody that wants to get involved in building like blockchain centric apps? And this is actually why Degan recommended that I should talk to you. Is I said like, well, hey, why don't we have an MCP server that coordinates the best tools and also the BSV libraries, and like here's the tools that it should be using, so it can kind of take that the guessing games out of you know, because there's lots of token protocols and there's lots of, you know, little things that can be chosen. But, you know, if somebody picks a protocol based on like, hey, I like this token protocol, but then I also want to use this application environment, then they may not be, you know, particularly compatible with each other, and now they're building lots of wrappers around things just to make them work. Like what tooling is available now, you know, and maybe it's MCP server or not, but what tools are there that allow us to sort of speed up the process and take a lot of the guessing out of the app development process, specifically in BSV, but maybe also more generally in you know, your full stack software dev?
Yeah, for sure. So the main one that I worked on is it's BSV-blockchain / Claude BSV Claude agents, I think it's called.
Okay.
Yeah, BSV Claude agents, and
Cool.
that's at GitHub.
Nice.
So what that is it's specific agents that are designed for Claude code, and those are trained on the different repos that we have in the BSV blockchain set of repos.
Yep.
The main ones being like the TS-SDK. There's some other ones in there like the wallet toolbox, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So that's where I would start. And the reason I opted to do it via agents has to do with the context window size. And so when you're using Claude, like you have to keep very good track of what your context window is, because you use a certain amount of tokens and then
Yep.
you lose the context. So this is actually one of the main areas of research in AI right now, is figuring out how to carry context over. There's different ways of doing it. But what you can do with the agents is using your main Claude agent as the orchestrator. You can call these different agents that are trained on this specific data, and they'll do stuff for you and then feed it back to your main agent without using any of that context window. So that was the main reason I opted to do it with agents. Now Claude has skills, which I haven't really dove into in great depth yet. But yeah, there's skills, and then there's the MCP tool as well. MCP tools are more so like utilizing something, whereas the agents seems like the better way to go when you want to build something.
Yeah. And, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. Let me just for anybody that doesn't know what the heck an agent is, because, you know, I think to the average person, their AI experience ends at, you know, Grok or Chat GPT. So your various agent is, you should think of it essentially like a specialist employee, like on your dev team, for example. Like, hey, I'm the expert on the TS SDK, so call me when you want to integrate TS SDK into your app in some way. Is that an accurate way to describe it?
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate way to describe it for sure. And there's even, it doesn't need to be that permanent either. So you can create them on the fly or dynamically as you're coding as well. And they only live within that context, or within that session, I should say.
Interesting.
Don't want to overuse context and confuse everybody.
Sure. Yeah, maybe explain context for us too, just so people understand, like what is context, like what does it mean in the LLM dev environment world?
Yeah, so the LLM is trained on a huge bunch of data that gets turned into vectors, which are basically just numbers that you take words, you turn them into vectors, and then those vectors are related to different things. And so they have close relations to certain words. And then when you send a prompt to the LLM, it fetches that using that graph, and it basically chooses what the most likely next word is, and you can adjust it with the temperature dial, and you can experiment with it that way. But that's all it's really doing. It's just a statistical model that's choosing the next best word based on the input data. So what context is you're using that base model, and then you're adding extra information on top to kind of fine tune that. And you can do that using RAG, or augmented retrieval, which basically you're doing that per prompt, or you can kind of fine tune the model directly and that kind of thing. Anyways,
sure. So it's funny, you know, I think people don't realize how LLMs work at all, but I really like that little bit of what it's essentially doing is trying to guess the next word. Like whatever you ask it, it's trying to come up with words and sentences that it thinks are the correct answer. So it's not accessing a database. So when you ask it like a general question, it's not like Wikipedia where there's a database with an answer. It's literally considering perhaps Wikipedia as a piece of source material, but it's trying to guess literally every piece of punctuation, every letter, and then every letter into every word, and then every word into every sentence. And so it's thinking in like this, I guess maybe 4D, 3D. Yeah, I guess it would be a 3D environment. Like, okay, up and down the line, like the next word, but then across like the next word into the next sentence. And so that's why it's called a large language model, is it's accessing like this fractal database of just the next word potentially. And that includes when it's doing things like math, unless you specifically are using a module that it will do math instead of just guessing your math. So in that context, like, for example, if you wanted to do cryptography as part of like something in the wallet toolbox, is the agent going to try to do its own math, or is it just going to say, I'm going to let the wallet toolbox do my math and then output me back the answer from there? Or is it guessing based on that as a data source? Like what is actually happening there?
Yeah, so basically it's calling it like a sub process. So it creates like a brand new sub process that is that agent, and then it's saying, do this based on the agent file, which is basically just a markdown file describing what you want it to do. And it'll go through and do what it needs to do. It can fetch things just the same as your main agent is doing, and then it returns that result back to the main agent. The main agent takes a look at it and integrates it with what you're wanting it to do.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about a project requirement document. This is kind of the cornerstone of vibe coding, is to have really good PRD. And I think it's where a lot of people fail. And also I wrote probably 6 months ago, it was a CoinGeek article, and I explained why I think that women might end up being better vibe coders than men. Because women have a tendency to be more organized thinkers from the get-go. They kind of see the whole vision. And if you're really good at explaining the whole vision from the get-go, then you're going to have a better luck with your Claude-based development process, because it's just accessing your PRD to make its decisions. So can you explain in a basic sense, like if I wanted to vibe code a web app that it accesses the blockchain for some piece of data, maybe tokenized data, what would your project requirement document look like for somebody? Like, let's assume that somebody watching really wants to get good at vibe coding and they want to vibe code a BSV app. Can you explain the importance of the PRD, and then maybe what are the things that you definitely want to put in your PRD?
Yeah, for sure. So a PRD is always a good thing to start with. Definitely. It doesn't matter as much now. Like, this is very late changes, very recent changes than it did previously, but that same concept still definitely matters. So Claude uses the claude.md file now, and so you can kind of put everything that you were putting in your PRD into the claude.md file, and then you can also ask it to create different task files for you in like a hidden folder or something like that. And I think it automatically started doing some of that now too. It uses a checklist as well, checklist tool. So I would say there's a few things that you want to add to your markdown document. one of the first things that I would recommend putting into it is if telling it that if it doesn't know the correct answer, then just to say that it doesn't know it and
Sure.
not try and return you something.
Yeah.
Because it'll just give you an
That'll
answer,
just
and
guess. Yeah.
it'll be super confident about it too.
Yep. Yeah, I hate
So,
that. That is the single worst thing about LLMs is that it'll straight up, if I tell it like, hey, find me a reference for something, it'll make up an author, it'll make up a book, it'll make up a library, whatever. And that is, just mission critical error stuff that my biggest fear, let me segue just a little bit, is that somebody at like the Navy or at some kind of critical monitoring place will use an LLM to like make some mission critical decision and then just go with it and like take down the grid or something. I that's a big fear that I think we're going to see some kind of catastrophe like that in the relatively near future, where then all of a sudden everyone's going to say, holy crap, like why was there not some kind of swim lane that this wasn't allowed to jump into here? Is that am I crazy, or is this a likely possible or plausible outcome?
I don't know if it's likely. Like, I'd like to think that the people in those positions would know better than to do something like that. But I mean,
yeah,
there's people still push code on Fridays, right? So it's
yeah.
there's always going to be something that happens. So I could definitely see that happening. And there's no way to really protect against it. I mean, these big AI companies like ChatGPT, OpenAI, they're trying to protect against this stuff, but you can't do it. It has to be on a per use contextual basis in order to get it right.
Yeah, user training, user error. From my cybersecurity days, everybody always asks like, what's the most secure anything? Like all my amateur friends, and I'm like, most of the tech is pretty darn secure. The tech is good. It's always somebody that like you didn't change the default password, or you set up some dumb thing, or you kept your private keys in a cloud dock unencrypted or something. And it's like it wasn't even that you got hacked. Like you published your private information in public. And it's always some crazy crap like that. So that really, like, that's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, is that kind of like, because think about that, there's got to be 10 million people with some access to mission critical stuff that might end up getting exploited, or not even exploit. Like you just tell the AI to execute something for you that it just thinks it's supposed to do. And
I could definitely see it happening. I mean, the Edward Snowden kind of example, like,
sure,
that was a pretty big gap in their system security.
Yeah, no, big time.
Easily. Well, the other thing too is I mean, attackers always have the advantage because they can just guess and check, right? And the defenders, they have to be correct the first time. So this has definitely compounded that. And I mean, you still have like red teams, and they would have the same advantage, but the fact that you can now iterate through that so fast, like you can have an AI model that's trained using Kali Linux. Like you can just run Kali Linux with an AI and just have it hack into stuff for you.
Yeah. No, it's wild. It's such a crazy thing. Well, and I even think about it for like brute forcing passwords in general. Like okay, what are the 1,000 most likely passwords that anybody uses on anything? And if you use like I love that what Kali Linux is too, but like plug that kind of thing into a Raspberry Pi and connect it into somebody's network and say, okay, just guess and check for 10 minutes even, and it, like, the likelihood that you'll hit some bit of useful data that you can exfiltrate is massive. So
absolutely, but that definitely bolsters the reason why we need micropayments, right? You get rid of these big rewards of hacking information, and you provide that data provenance and the data privacy.
Right. So, just talking about like security more broadly, like what is a practical way to use micropayments to secure your data away from just being able to be listened to, for example? Like, you know, let's not assume that I've, put a Raspberry Pi in the server room and it's sitting there. But, what are some ways that you can actually use micropayments as a firewall for data?
Um, well, it comes down. It usually just comes down to encryption. But the way I'm
Yeah,
thinking about it is more so in tracking information. So you can
sure.
have logging. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to use that outside of the context of an overlay, but
Right.
just having that data provenance and being able to say, yes, I had this information at this time, and then it was over here, and you can prove that really quickly. And then there's also the built-in double hashing mechanism, so you have
Yeah.
one linking to the data itself, and then you have the other one that can be used for transport, so you have two built-in namespaces that you can use for this stuff. It just makes organizing it a lot cleaner and
Yeah.
more elegant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hear PJ's asking what's number 2 on the PRD. Yeah, we segued away from the PRD a little bit. So like what are some more steps on the PRD, please?
Yeah, so I would say that is one of the main things that you want to put into there. The other thing too is I would also suggest you telling it to use conciseness over readability. So because that can eat away at your tokens. So you
Yeah,
can just tell it, yeah, just use as few words as possible when you're returning these prompt answers.
sure.
And then it really comes down to the context of your project. So you use the /init for sure, use that, and then also use the planning mode. So that's shift tab twice to get it into plan mode. And then from there, you can kind of build out what you want it to do. And the last like major tip I would say is use test-driven development, because that provides a built-in kind of check model that it can use to correct itself, even if you
Right.
let it run by itself. I usually
Very
don't
cool.
though. I usually watch it, and I
Sure.
confirm each time. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't recommend just letting it run by itself.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the big difference between like a capable developer versus somebody that's like, hey, I don't actually know how to code, but I'm going to vibe code this thing. And, because like for my guys, like, they've been, some of my guys have been engineers for 20 years. And so for them, they can just look at what gets output and immediately see if there's some kind of fundamental problem. But like me, for example, I'm, you know, code like a 7-year-old, So for me, like to output the thing, I don't know, it ran, it executed, so it's good, right? And sometimes it'll technically run, but it's doing some stupid thing that I wouldn't necessarily notice. Are we seeing like that kind of like audit ability that can start to solve some of those problems? I'm thinking back to there's some dating app or something that leaked a bunch of information like 6 months ago, and everybody got doxxed on the thing that they were. I can't remember the details, but but it was a big privacy problem, and again because it vibe coded the database in unencrypted. Is that kind of thing more heavily solved for today, or like when does it make sense to say, okay, I think this whole app works, but I still need to hire some kind of engineer to check my security? Like when would you say something is actually ready to publish, especially when we're talking about a blockchain app where you might be dealing with private keys or money? Like what is that last step before making something public for security reasons?
Yeah, you need an expert to have a look at it before you can be really confident with it. So I would suggest just don't have personal identifying information in your
Yeah.
application if you're vibe coding it.
Yeah.
And it
No.
actually that's what we want to do with micropayments, right? We want to
Yeah.
keep everybody's information in their control, in their wallet, or however they want to do it, and then you just provide that on a on an ad hoc needed basis to the application that you're using.
Yeah. What would be 1 to 3 things that everybody should know about trying to vibe code an app in general? Like what if you had 10 minutes to talk to a room of devs that don't otherwise have any experience with BSV or blockchain apps in general, or maybe even just like any of these AI tools for such a things, like what are like core principles you'd like people to know, or maybe something that would make a legacy full stack dev really excited about moving their stuff A, to something like Claude, or B, over to something that is utilizing micropayments in their app in a novel way?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I got to think about it.
That's all right.
I would say the main thing is just to keep in mind that it is a statistical model. So you have to be really careful about anthropomorphizing it, because once you start doing that, I mean, what I mentioned before, that's what's like causing psychosis in people now.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, like you have to remember that it is just a statistical model, and it's garbage in, garbage out. So make sure you have as many checks as possible. Use test-driven development. Utilize that Claude file. Use init. Use plan mode. Use agents for specific things. Use MCP tools. All the different things that are available now.
What do you think of blockchain as an OAuth? I wrote recently about basically using it for login instead of things like login with Facebook, which I think has been deprecated now, but they still login with X, login with Google, login with Apple. What are the benefits of just blockchain as a OAuth, like a basic identity process? What does that solve for people from like a privacy standpoint or whatever else?
It goes back to shifting that paradigm. So instead of the application storing your personal information, you're holding onto that yourself, and you only selectively expose it. So there's an app I was working on recently. It was like an over 18 app that gave you access to like a whiskey and cigar store, but you have a certificate that's sitting inside your BSV or BRC100 wallet, and then as long as that certificate says that yes, you are over 18, you're only exposing that information, then you get access to the site. But it starts with shifting that paradigm.
Who should be reaching out to you? Degan said, "Hey man, I want questions from anybody that wants to talk. Like, send me information." So what kind of person should be reaching out to Jake Jones to say, "Hey Jake, maybe sense check this for me, or help me, or guide me down this direction"? Like, who are those people?
Anybody that's curious about this stuff, shoot me a message, and I'll try to answer you as quickly as possible.
What's the best way to reach you?
Definitely not email, although my email is out there all over the place. So I would say probably like Telegram, I guess, Telegram, Slack, that kind of thing. Okay. If you can reach out, or X too, send me a private message on X.
DMs on X. Yep. Cool. No, that's great. We've got less than a minute here. Any final thought on things?
Just that the future looks really bright. It's super interesting. I mean, there's a lot of negativity that you see all the time in the news, but everything that's been happening is absolutely insane. And there's no better time to be alive. So I'm super excited.
I love that. No, I say the same thing. There's a lot of doomers out there, but we're at the cusp of like a lot of human and breakthrough stuff that I think is really exciting. So, Jake,
100%.
Always a pleasure. It was really good to catch up. Please hang on in the green room. We're going to record a special for our Rad TV subscribers, so we can talk about. I don't know. We can get a little more spicy. We can drill into this stuff more. We can talk about whether or not the Earth is flat, which seems like the thing everybody wants to talk about this week. So, yeah, no, I appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Kurt.
For sure. Take care. All right, everybody. That was Jake Jones at the BSVA. I can't express how important it is to get good at these tools, and I think a lot of people are resistant to new technology just in general. Like, you think back to people that were protesting, replacing people that swung hammers with machines that helped build the railroads, because like, oh my God, everybody's going to lose their job. But in reality, we created a lot more jobs, and I think with these tools, it really allows people to become their own agency, where you would have had to have hired 5-6 people at the cost of many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to create a development agency. But now, just with the tooling that exists, it allows you to have digital agents that maybe you're paying a few $100 a month for in total, that allows you to become a pretty useful person in the space, and any space that can be in full stack web dev, or full stack app dev, or specific blockchain development, and really solving lots of problems. So if there's a problem out there, you hear about somebody's need, somebody needs something to exist, maybe try to vibe code it yourself and see if you can start to solve the problem, and say, hey, maybe hire me. And it starts to create a lot more job opportunity than it takes away, which is usually the case with most technology. Is people get scared that it's going to replace them, but then they realize that in reality it's just making them a more viable person to help in the economy. And so I'm super bullish on this stuff too. I hope you've enjoyed the show, everybody. If you haven't, hit the dislike button twice on YouTube, and that'd be really helpful. But if you like the show, please like it on all the platforms, subscribe, hit the alert bell, all that stuff. I would really appreciate it. And remember, we need to be good to each other. I think we get into lots of bickering matches about things that really don't matter, and you start to hate people over really minute things that really only problem, like this kind of problem would only happen on the internet, where if we were having conversations over a beer, this would be not a big problem. We'd be able to see each other's humanity and actually learn something from each other. So also do that. When you're done watching this show, share it to a friend, and then go outside and meet a new friend. So everybody, I appreciate you. It's been really, really great. Please stay tuned for the rest of the year. We're going to do 2 or 3 more shows until the end of 2025. And we've got some stuff to talk about for 2026 as well. So keep your ear to the ground for that stuff. I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. Be good to each other. Do all the stuff. Read my article at CoinGeek.com. And I will see you next week at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the next CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. Goodbye.